today's going to be our contribution to the national conversation around mental health. So today we're going to be talking about the realities of motherhood, how we can support ourselves as mothers, but also each other, and also how we raise resilient kids. So the four of you all come from very different backgrounds and areas of expertise, but we are linked by the common thread that is motherhood. And I thought it might be interesting for you guys to know that between the four of you, you've actually raised over 30 children, and I'm sure loved and nurtured many more. So I'd love to just sort of introduce you all to each other, if that's okay. So I'll start with you, Mary. We've got Mary Wagner here, who has dedicated her life to helping others. So first through your career as a nurse, and then as a mother to 8 children, and now as a philanthropist who supports families in our community. So also earlier this year, Mary very deservedly was awarded a Member of the Order of Australia. So congratulations, Mary, and thank you for joining us. We're also very fortunate to have Alicia Weston here with us today. So Alicia is a clinical psychologist, a mother of 3 boys, but also the founder of Mindful Mummies. Now, Mindful Mummies is a program that teaches mothers mindfulness, meditation, but also self-compassion. So that's all things that they can bring to their parenting. So thank you, Alicia. Jenny Bonnell, we've also got with us. Now, Jenny, you are the matriarch of Australia's largest family. So you have 16 children. 16, and yes. You live here in Toowoomba. But you also have a very large media following. So you've got over 6,000 people on social media who watch your every move as you parent. So I can't wait to hear about how's on your parenting. And finally, but certainly not the least, we've got Jules Allen here today. And Jules has actually come up from Melbourne, so thank you for travelling. Now, Jules is an award-winning youth advocate and also a motivational speaker. She's appeared on MasterChef Australia and Australian Story. She's also a foster mother, so you've raised over 32 foster kids whilst also raising 4 of your own. So we're very lucky to have everyone here today, and I can't wait to get stuck in. So I thought I might start with you, Mary, if that's okay. As someone who has dedicated her life to caring for others, I'd love to know if you had time or how you found time to care for yourself.
Well, it was a bit hard because I was the first Wagner woman to work outside the home. And it was really frowned on in my era. And so I worked night duty for 13 years for education because children, we needed the money for education. Yeah. And
I had heard you worked nights whilst Henry worked during the day, is that right?
And we'd pass each other in the front door. He'd come home to take over. Yeah. Wow.
So, you know, self-care or stealing a moment for yourself was
very difficult.
Really rough.
Very difficult.
And you work with a lot of mothers and families today.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think it's just as hard today or even harder perhaps for mothers to get some time for themselves?
I think today's mothers have got the benefit of more conveniences, like washing machines and that sort of thing that we didn't have.
For granted.
And they've got better opportunities, but if you talk to the young mothers, they think that it's harder than we had.
Yeah.
But I think it's a matter of priority. Like we didn't have any floor coverings for years and years. We lived in the garage for
So just
2
different.
years. Yeah. And that doesn't happen today. The younger mothers expect to have everything, and something's got to give because if you want to educate your children.
Yeah. Alicia, that's sort of Mary's touching on sort of the expectations of motherhood, and I'd love to hear your perspective as a professional who works in this space. Is self-care important for mums, or do they just expect as being part of becoming a mother they won't have time for it?
Yeah, it's probably a hard question because I think mothers know that self-care is a necessity, but don't prioritise it. So like Mary was saying, it does come down to priorities, and it's that there's so many other things to juggle that often the mothers that I work with, or all mothers in general, often tend to put all of the other things as their top priorities, and their self-care
falls down the list. So what are the outcomes though if the mothers do get it right? So if you have a mum who you see is prioritising or making time for self-care, what's the outcome of that, and how does it affect the kids especially?
You see happier families and more resilient children, I think, because how her mental health is, or how the mother is caring for themselves, is being modelled to the children and to the rest of the family. So I think so much does revolve around the mother, that if she is happy and content, then usually the family is happy and content also.
Yeah, leading by example. Yeah. Jenny, you've got 16 kids, and I don't know about everyone else, but when I hear 16 kids, I just assume you don't have time for yourself. Is that right, or is this something that you make sure you get?
I think for many years as I started, I thought that to be a good mum, to be a good wife, was about serving and giving all of myself to my family. And I found probably about the halfway mark that had to stop, because I was running myself into the ground. So at that point, I started to find time out for myself and hobbies and things that I liked to do, and I just spoke with the family and said, this has to happen to keep me, as a complete person, so that I just don't wither away, just out of working myself into the ground. Mm-hmm. And it has worked. The children have stepped up, and hubby would come in and take over looking after the kids, so I could have some time for myself.
Yeah. So it was very much about letting the family know that was important for you, and
if you don't tell them, they're never going to know that mum's having a rough time. I think you have to be very open about it, and it's a good thing to let your children know that you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be running all the time. It's okay to be able to step back and to relax and to take some me time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what about the scrutiny element of it? You've sort of got 6,000 people watching you parent, and so maybe are they part of the reason that you think maybe I need to be seen as always doing something and always acting the perfect mum or something like that, or are you just immune to that scrutiny now?
Oh, look, there's no perfect mum, not at all. So I mean, we're all flawed, we're all failing at something in amongst it, and I mean that's just life. And I'm the first person to pop my hand up and say we lose socks, I forget children. I've left them behind. We've done the Home Alone thing. We've messed up, and I've messed up, and that's okay. I think it's okay, and I think people need to see that sometimes too. It's nice to see all the glossy stuff, but they need to see the real too.
Yeah. Jules, you've spoken a lot about resilience, but also that honesty, authenticity piece that I think Jenny's talking about. And, you've brought that to a lot of children now. So how important do you think is that as messaging for your kids about, resilience, but being honest with your flaws and open?
Oh, look, it was one of the best things we had in our house, and I think it's set the kids in good stead, is a sense of humour and a capacity to laugh at your flaws. And I laugh at myself probably more than anyone I know, or all my kids laugh at me. But we're incredibly flawed, and I think the ability to just look at those flaws and to learn from them, and then not learn from them. The amount of times I make the same mistake over again is phenomenal. I just go, wow, you just did that again and again and again. And I don't hide much from my kids these days. I mean, they're older, so it's a lot easier to do that. But, as far as self-care goes, it's the tiny little things too. I'm a single mum, and I've always been a single mum. So self-care to me, it was the kids knew after dinner I would get up from the table, get my cup of tea and sit out the front, and they weren't allowed to speak to me until the dishes were done. I didn't care who did them. I didn't want to hear the argument, and that was self-care. I learnt to shut a bedroom door when the boys were 14. Before that, I was mental. And then I learnt to shut bedroom doors. That was self-care, because I didn't have to look at it. And I went, my God, there's a door. And I shut it. That was self-care. It's tiny little things. I think what you were talking about, younger people and expectations, the bar's pretty high these days. I mean, we lived in a tiny house too with 1,000 million kids. We're all right. And my focus was on education as well.
Yes.
So we went without a lot of other things and it was fine, but we laughed a lot.
Yes.
And my kids are great at laughing at their flaws and at one another, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. What about, you're similar to Jenny, you've kind of, because of your, I suppose, position in the media, you sort of have all eyes on you a lot of the time. How does that affect the kids' resilience? Like, are they very resilient to that, seeing mum on the TV and all that sort of thing?
They completely ignore it.
Not
They hate
impressed?
it, they ignore it, they don't want to know about it. It's I remember saying, when I went on MasterChef, because I had media following me everywhere, and I remember saying to the kids, just for a really short amount of time, can you just behave? Like, just don't do anything radical. Keep your heads low. In that 6 months, honestly, one got expelled from school, the other one, and I was like, guys. So
So they did really well with
really
that simple
well.
directive.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know, it's they don't pay any attention to it, to be honest.
Yeah.
They kind of find it hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just laughing at mum
Yeah.
on the TV.
Well, it's just, we're still their mums. So they just think it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Like, why are they interested in you? You're the person who flushes the toilet because I can't be bothered, or wipes the bench because I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
So it's,
No one's special.
Yeah.
Just mum.
Yep.
Just mum. So what about, we've sort of touched on that perhaps self-care in a lot of people's minds becomes this bigger than thou thing. I need to be taking, myself off for a holiday or something. But, you've mentioned, Jules, it's these little acts of self-care every day, much smaller things. Do you guys have a few little traits like that, whether it's the cup of tea or that you guys do to grab your time?
Yes, that's important, the small things.
The small
Because,
things.
like, we went 10 years, for 10 years, and didn't leave Toowoomba. Even down to Helen, we couldn't afford it. So you stayed at home, made the most of it, and made your own fun. And ours were close together like Jenny's, or closer, I think. And I had 8 in 9 years. And
8 children in 9 years.
Yes.
People.
Oh, wow.
They're responsible for most of the kids that you mentioned, the 30 or something. Most of them are there. That one in particular.
And I used to worry that they wouldn't make outside friends because they had each other
Yeah.
and they created, and they all had part-time jobs
Yeah.
from a young age. They never ever got pocket money. They had to, they could see Henry and I working, and I think they gathered that work ethic from us.
Yeah.
But there were never any handouts.
So that's sort of almost sounding like it's, the independence gave your
Yes.
kids a lot of resilience.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that something you guys find as well, Alicia or Jenny?
Yeah, I do. I think building autonomy in children and letting them go off and, that they're going to make mistakes and kind of empowering them through their mistakes as well. But yes, building their independence, which is something that I think is becoming more challenging in this day and age. I think that's something that we're losing a bit in kids, which then is affecting their resilience, that they're not as independent now as what they were in previous generations.
No.
I mean, resilience
That's
is
right.
born out of necessity. You can't teach that. No, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, but this whole thing that we can teach people to be resilient, and it's born out of necessity. If you don't give them anything, they're going to have to fight for it.
True.
If they fall over and you don't pick them up, they're going to have to figure out how to stand back up.
Yeah.
I'll try and pull up. Clearly it's having
Passionate subject.
the toughest
Yeah.
kids I've
Yeah.
met are foster kids. You don't get a kid tougher than that. And they will figure out how to survive because they've had to. Let them figure it out.
Yeah.
As long as they've got a pulse at the end of the day, we're all good. That was a running gag in our house. Everyone's got a pulse? Good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Low bar.
The bar was low. I think as
alive.
mothers, we don't have to do it all for them.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the worst thing we can do is do it all for them and feel guilt that we haven't done it all for them.
There's a lot more helicopter mothers now.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, that's
Like,
something we hear
how
a lot of.
stressful.
That protection. Wrapping your kids in cotton wool and things like that.
Yeah.
Like I was put on a horse at age 5 and said go to school. And
Did your mum and dad just whack it on the buttons?
No one was running next to the horse to make sure he didn't fall off, did they?
the husband takes the day off work.
Yeah.
And they're
I was put
just
on the horse and sent to
overprotected.
school.
Yeah, it was a horrible horse too, but anyhow.
Jenny, you were joking before that,
cool.
with 16 kids, after a certain time they kind of have to raise themselves. But, that with big families, Mary's got 8, you have 16.
Yeah.
How much of the resilience must come from, each other, the kids helping each other and learning to take responsibility that way?
Yeah. I think just, Mary would understand this in a big household. You do have to find your place in it. There's so much going on all the time that you have to learn to step forward and get in there and do your own things. So it's not that they're sort of parenting themselves. I mean, like Ray and I still parent our children, but it is about letting them be responsible and learn the things that they're going to need when they go out into the big world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what about if I throw something out there that I think we hear a lot about in the media that's sort of touted as one of the barriers to mums looking after themselves, and this is the mum guilt idea. That even if you are one of these unicorn parents that manages to carve out that space for yourself all the time, you spend that whole time feeling guilty about it. Has anyone experienced that?
We do it to each other as women.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're the worst enemies of one another with that one. If we could just get on with supporting one another and respecting that we're all doing the hardest job on the planet. And if that person wants to take a day out a week and can afford to do that, good on them.
Yeah.
Rather than sit back and criticise them for it. Well done, whatever you do. We're all doing the best we can.
Very true.
Yep.
And I think as mums too, that if you can, some people can afford to take that time off and that's great. If you can't, you need to have really good friends around you that we can trade off. And you say, well, look, I'm going to look after your kids today so you can go and have some free time, go get your hair done or whatever it is, and then you can swap.
I feel like that's something we don't hear very much about at all. Friendships with mums, we always talk about mums almost like this solo entity, but friendships and female friendships and that support, how much of a lifeline that can be, especially when we are so busy, we've got so many things going on. That's really sort of, to have friends helping you along can be a big thing. You mentioned you're a single parent, Jules, so you must have a wonderful support network of friends as well.
I did and I didn't, because I was a really young mum. So most of my friends didn't have kids when I had kids. They've all got young ones now and I just sit back going, oh, this is great. I'm done. Had a good time with that. So I didn't have enormous, and I decided to do it as hard as, I moved away from my family, decided to have a few kids and then adopt a whole heap and foster a whole heap, and totally different to what all my friends were doing. So, no, I didn't. There were a few friends around, but it's I don't know, you stay in the day and you get it done, I think. You just get through, I don't know, you just keep it in the day.
All my friends had big families.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a different generation.
Yeah.
And they had big families, so if they'd come for afternoon tea,
there'd be a tribe.
Oh yes, there'd be 20 kids.
But did you find, we were saying in the car on the way up, that one of the good ways about having time out too is the barbecues and picnics and get-togethers with your friends and kids, so that everyone kind of sits back and one's kind of watching the kids for a while.
Oh.
That was a great way to have time out, is just to get
was.
everyone going on camping trips with large groups of people, and I found that one of the best ways to have time out.
And that's what we touched on in the car, is how we view self-care, of what is our idea of self-care. That are we missing, or are we saying that we're not doing anything in terms of caring for ourselves, but we're overlooking, the barbecue with friends or the camping holiday or a morning out with the kids, because we don't see a morning at the park as self-care. So I think a lot is changing our perspective of what is doable with where we're at in terms of our, how many children we have, or, if your idea of self-care was to have a full day off every week, then, it's not going to work. So it's what is manageable for us. It's probably not manageable for many mums at all, but what is manageable, for me right now with where I'm at. And if that's going to the park and sitting down and having brunch with friends and letting the kids run around, then that is self-care.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need to change our perspective of how we're viewing it.
Where it has changed, like all the young ones,
Yeah.
your age group, all
We're in such a different age group, but flattery, thank you. I'm running with it.
good on you. They go out to lunch every so often.
Friday. They got to lunch on
We
Friday.
never had the money.
Well, there
Did
wasn't
you,
any
Jenny?
cafes. There was bakeries.
Sorry.
We would never had the money to go out to lunch.
No.
Never.
Yeah. So again, it's almost that expectation piece changing. What
Yes.
when we say self-care or carving time
What
out
is
for
it?
mum, what's it look like? And it's different. It's changed.
Oh,
and
yes.
Alicia said it'll be different for everybody.
Yes.
I used to get up when the kids were old enough. I'd get up and go at like 5:30 and go for a run every morning. And the kids would know on a rainy day not to go near me because I hadn't been for my run. And that used to just clear my head, and I'd come in, I'd be, okay, right, I'm ready to go now. And that was self-care. It was just time out before I had to deal with the
All
madness.
Problems of the
Yeah,
day.
or just making sandwiches, really. Which, drive you nuts on a
Sandwich
good day. Sandwich fatigue.
Because I'm the next generation to you. They all had hot breakfasts.
I was a hot breakfast lady, Mary. I hung on to it for as long as I could. The next generation didn't pick it up, but I was hanging in there.
Something's got to
It was like a cafe in my place. The kids wanted a coffee machine put in. I went, that's where I draw the line. There is no coffee machine going in this kitchen, or I would have been making coffees as well. I was hot breakfast. Yep, donkey eggs and scrambled eggs.
The bus would be
See,
coming.
I am in
and
your generation. We're not that different, Mary, really. I'm closer to you, really. Yeah.
4 more kids and you'll be on par.
Not a hope in hell. No way. No. Jenny will have 4 more.
Yes.
So, Leash, what are sort of some of the things, I suppose, if we're going to throw ideas out there? We've mentioned, self-compassion and perhaps the judgment factor of other mums. What are some of the things that we can probably do to support each other better?
Acceptance, I think, and the withholding judgment, as Jules touched on before, that we're, as much as we probably don't like to admit it, I think we are critical of other mothers, and whether it's the working mums or the stay-at-home mums, we do throw those judgments out. So I think it is bringing back that community and having the supportive the support within the mothers groups. Absolutely. To be able to ring up on a bad day and say, I'm really struggling, I need to get out of the house, can we go for a walk? Or just having that openness with mothers that everyone does it tough, everybody has hard days, everybody has days that they might be ashamed that they've yelled at the kids, or going back, none of us are perfect, and I think having that support of bringing the tribe back together in the communities. And that's something that I really love with the Mindful Mummies groups, is that by the end of the groups, people had formed their own friendships that the groups always continued to run. And I think that was part of my motivation behind starting it, was I thought we were missing that community of mothers in some way.
Yeah. Actually, it's probably, I've realised another thread that connects everybody is that you're all part of organisations or support them or have even started them that are very active in supporting mothers and supporting families. So, Mary, you sort of have taken on that role, philanthropic role in the community. So, what are some of the organisations that you're working with that are supporting mums and families?
Well, I'm sponsored 2 Sudanese families. One has 6 children and the other has 4. And it was before the days that the government helped them. And they had absolutely nothing when they arrived. But they've both done very well. And the kids have now grown up, to university and gone off to university. And the other families, they're very bright. So, they would never have got that opportunity. Yeah.
When did you get involved in that?
About ages ago, 15 years ago.
Okay. So your kids were had grown up a bit and were out of home, and so you decided to
do
it all again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's fantastic. And so this, literally, how did you get involved? So they kind of landed in Australia and then they were on their
I
own?
had to sponsor them from the refugee camp.
Wow.
And I knew someone who was a chaplain in the camp, and these two families were picked. So I picked the first one, and then the second one was, they were so happy here, but she was missing her sister who was still in, so she's the one with the bigger family.
Wow. So now there's a whole Toowoomba sort of community that you've sponsored almost.
Yes.
That's really wonderful.
Yes.
Wow. Leash, you've touched a little bit on sort of mindful mummies. Why did you, well, you sort of mentioned even why you started it up, but how is that going and what are the outcomes you're seeing from your mindful mummies?
Yeah, I think when I did start it, I had just had my second child, and it was being awake, breastfeeding so many hours during the night that, I don't know, I thought, I find this hard and I have everything in terms of I've got a supportive environment around me. I've got so many close friends that I can have those real honest conversations with. We didn't have any financial stresses, you know, we had everything and it was still tough. So I was thinking, what is it like for, you know, all of the mothers that I see with mental health, or what is it like for the mothers that don't have good supports around them, or they're single parenting, you know, all of these different scenarios. So I guess you've got a lot of time to think when you're breastfeeding during the night. And so I think, you know, within a week I'd had this whole program written and and went back to work, and then went through that juggle of feeling guilty that I was going back. It was only a little bit of work going back to, but finding that juggle then with, you know, with having two kids and going back to work. But so that was really my main motivation behind starting it, and it started then as an 8-week program touching on all of the issues that I found were most evident in the sessions that I worked with mums. So around identity changes or relationship changes, mindfulness and self-compassion were a big one. So really equipping them with the tools to go away and build on. So it was a real practical but also theory-based, but relationships was such a huge part that the mums made so many good connections through it, which was really beneficial.
Yeah, building those friendships and that support. Yeah, it certainly does seem like the future for mums, and if we want to, you know, improve, it's going to come from other mums, isn't it? It's very much women supporting women. Yeah. Jenny, you're, you know, quite active in your community and very involved with your faith and religion, and how have you found all that sort of as a support network?
I'm very lucky that I belong to a lovely community of similar-minded faithful followers, so I find that that's what gets me through, because there's plenty of hard times with being a mum, lots of struggles. It's hard work, because, and I mean, even though I've got a lot of children, that doesn't make me an expert either, because it's like having an only child times 16.
Every time. Yeah.
They are completely different from each other. And so what works with one child doesn't work with the next. So I'm a new parent with each child, and I'm a new parent at each stage as we're going through. So it's a struggle, and I do pull back, and my faith is what gets me through. So
we've touched on the social media thing, but we focus on the negative of the social media, and I've joked that you've got 6,000 people watching you, but there must be the other side of it as well. It must be that a lot of these people reach out with kindness and support, and have you had some of that as well from your following?
I have. I used to sit around and tout the horrors of social media, and I would tell my children, we're not doing this, and then my children sort of started to get involved with it, and they're like, come on mum, you know, and so they're still sort of dragging me into this, and I was like, and once I was in there, I was like, wow, there are all these other mums around the world with families the same size as mine or even bigger, and I made all these great friendships, and now we have all these groups where we can trade off tips and ideas, and you know, when we're feeling down, you know, it's hard to get another mum, say, of 1 or 2 children, to really understand what it's like if you've got 16 children. And, you know, playing this game of I'm playing with a toddler and then all of a sudden we're doing relationships and job choices and, you know, buying houses and all that sort of thing. So to have somebody there, that's really important. And I find then that I then became somebody that they would also then reach out to, and I spend a lot of my very late nights sitting there sort of talking with mums about what they're going through. And, you know, I can say, well, like, you know, what worked for me is this. You can try it. If it doesn't, we'll keep working on it, you know.
Yeah, it's sort of that theme again of connectedness and connecting with mums in the same circumstances as us, whatever that is, or going through the same things as us. That's sort of emerging as a theme.
I think we've got to preserve the family unit. Because it's Australia's greatest asset. But the family unit is changing. But we've got to embrace the change and
and I think probably the social media are helping connect different families who seem different from our normal mould, connecting them so they're not feeling alone, because, you know, the large family, again, we've joked, but it's very uncommon now. You know, having even 8 children married. Let alone
I didn't even know there was more.
I
was kind of like, I felt very alone.
Exactly.
Mother had 16, I had 8.
Wow.
Our children have all got 4. Their children will have 2, and then it'll be down to 1 again.
It does seem to follow that, you know, they seem to get smaller, but, well, Jenny's proved that wrong.
I came from a small family, so.
There you go. Jules, we were, talking about the organisations that we all support, and you actually had the Jules Allen's Foundation, and you also do all that youth advocacy as well. When did you start doing that?
I accidentally started when I was 22. Everything I've done in life's pretty much been an accident. I ended up fostering a 16-year-old when I was 22 years old. So there wasn't much in the age difference between us. And she's 38 now, and we laugh about who raised who. And it kind of, you were talking before about mothers supporting mothers, and one thing that really stands out to me is that, to me, extends, you know, yes, we need to restore the family, but we need to restore the village, because there's a whole lot of kids out there not being cared for because their mothers are in that bracket, and that is the severely mentally ill, the drug addicted, and, you know, we need to support them because there's a whole lot of kids out there that aren't being supported, and they kind of get shunned over there. Now, I've fostered a lot of kids, and I've met a lot of mothers of those children, and they're good women. You know, they're really good women who have been incredibly affected by mental health often, which has led into addiction, and then they've been taken advantage of. And then the men leave and they're left with babies that they can't care for. They're not bad people. That's been my experience again and again and again. And so I'm a huge advocate for looking after those women's children. We've got 80,000 of them in this country. And I'll never stop waving the flag for that, because it's a village. We're all here. I had a spare bed. There was a room under the stairs. I would have shoved one under there. You know, I turned a garage into a bunk room. It's because I had the room, and I think we've lost sight of that because we compartmentalise society, and those people are in that and they're over there. Well, they're not. They're just kids needing a home and a bed. And so I've done a lot of work overseas, but I keep coming back to, well, there's 80,000 kids here. And, you know, one of the things I hear, well, what if they affect my children? Yep, they might. Your kids might develop some empathy, might be exposed to the fact that they're pretty bloody lucky because they've come from where they've come from. And I'm yet to have, we had some wars in the house, and I remember my son walking in one day and saying, either he goes or I go, and there was one kid who was a bit difficult, but he had to learn to tolerate it, and he had to learn compassion. And you know, I have an incredible family of kids that are a complete mix of fostered and adopted and my own, and I'm enormously grateful for that. And I just think we've got to stop compartmentalising kids, you know, in the playground. It happens everywhere. And I think as women, we need to start looking to the ones who are really at the bottom of the barrel, in our opinion, of society, and going, what can I do? Whether it's go over and say, you okay? What do you need? Do you need me to take the kids for a few days? Do you need to go into rehab? Do you need some help? They're still humans. You know, they might just need help with the kids for a while until they get back on their feet. So I just think we've got to remove some stigmas and start treating people as worthy of being met.
I love the idea that, you know, the solution is female as well. It's certainly not something that we need help with. We can help each other. We're so capable of that. And this idea of the village, who is the basis of the village? It's the mums
Yeah.
the women.
Always. I've worked in Indigenous cultures and the women look after culture.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way it runs. And they do a really good job of it.
And that would have been so important, Mary, when you had your family village. You know, you knew your neighbours,
Yes.
you knew the school teacher, you knew everyone that your kids had contact with were part of your circle. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We had cloth nappies. We didn't have...
I had cloth nappies too, Mary. There's another thing that ties us together. You?
Yeah, I did the first 9 in cloth, yeah.
Yeah.
So thought I had it over you then. I did the first 9 in cloths.
Right, yeah. I'll stop there. So do you think that modern families, you know, that's a big part of what's missing perhaps, and the change is the village, you know?
Oh, yes,
So many people don't know their neighbours, you know?
No, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
Even, some elderly person living
Yeah.
beside them,
Yeah.
they
Alone.
never check on them or,
Yeah.
you know,
Loneliness.
talk to them.
And,
Yes.
Yeah. We've gotten good at ignoring people, haven't we?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. I find it, Go on, another rant.
I think a common theme in all of that is not underestimating the difference that we can make of being able to go next door and to check on the elderly neighbour, or to say hello to the mum at the park who, you know, the kids are having a tantrum and trying to walk out to the car, of going and offering if they need a hand. I think, you know, we can make such a big difference that we just need to be brave enough to put ourselves out there to connect with other people.
yeah. At least you've sort of worked in that space for a while, so the, you know, loneliness and isolation and the lack of connectedness that we've talked about is something that mums are constantly bringing up, isn't it? Yeah.
I feel a bit sorry for the mums out in the country areas, miles away from, any activity.
The rural sort of
Yes,
ones.
yes.
Has that always been the way though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's always been the way. But, like, phones didn't come in till I was about 18. So, they had no contact at all then. But then it was party line and everyone listened in.
No privacy.
But at least they could talk to someone. But now they've all got computers and that. But I think that face-to-face talking is the important thing.
Yeah.
I think that's probably another positive if we, you know, ever look at the positive side of social media, that it's given us, you know, women in the country now, as Jenny was saying, can find other women in the country online and build their community or build their tribe, you know, that way.
Yes.
Yeah. Jules, I was going to ask you about that actually, because again, that scrutiny, that life in the media, we're very negative on it a lot of the time. But have you had some lovely instances of kindness and people contacting you that way?
Look, the way I look at it is I going on MasterChef was an accident. The kids signed me up. I'd never even seen the show.
It's a good prank to pull on mum, isn't it?
I arrived to the first audition without food. You were meant to bring a cold plate. I was a single mum. Cold plate was a sandwich cut up. I didn't even know what a cold plate was. So anyway, I accidentally got on. I didn't want to be a chef or own my own restaurant. I didn't have a food story. So if you look at the episodes, at no point did the judges say, "What's your food dream?" Because I didn't have one. I didn't even know what I was doing on the show. But the upside of media is when I got off and they wanted me to start doing my own cooking show, and I sat back and really thought about what mattered to me, and that stuff didn't matter to me. I've been able to do this, and I can do this because I had media exposure. So it's about making the media work for you. And I have done projects in Cambodia, and I've worked with Deborah Lee Finesse and Hugh Jackman on adoption here, and that's all because of the media. So it's about making it work, and you've just got to stay true to yourself, and you would know that, Jenny. If you're in the media, the only way you escape scrutiny is by being incredibly true to yourself, because then you can stand by, you have conviction behind everything that you've said and done. You go and try and present something that's not authentic and real and watch them tear you apart, and you've got nothing. You're very thin on the ground when you do that. So, if you stay true to what matters to you and use the media, it's a fantastic tool for a lot of different reasons for helping people. For me, it's been able to help me help others. So, yeah.
Yeah. Leash, the media, you know, again, we give it a really hard rap with kids and resilience and all that sort of thing, but is there a positive story there? Can we even use that as a tool to help our kids and help mothers?
You're probably asking after a bad week. I was on the same I'm seeing so much more of the media-related problems in the
than
solutions
space this week.
So trying to think of the positive now, especially for kids. Of course, there's the connection and there's the education side of it, but at the moment I am seeing a lot more negative than positive.
They're not taught how to use it positively.
No.
That's the problem. We've given them this incredible tool.
Yeah.
Here you go, have this.
Yeah.
It's like giving a kid a gun.
Yeah. And
This can kill animals to feed your family, but we didn't teach them that bit.
Yeah.
We just gave them a gun and can't understand why it's gone wrong. It's exactly what we did with social media.
Yeah.
Here's this amazing tool. We're not going to give you any tips on how to make it work well for you.
Yeah.
And it's just become a destructive unit, really.
And there's just access to everything.
Yeah.
You know, they just need to type it in,
Oh,
Yes.
and they can come up with anything. And I'm seeing a lot of detriments to it at the moment. But of course there are. You know, there are.
What
positives
age group?
as well.
4 upwards?
Yeah, I'm seeing it with all. So the children that I work with are more probably 9 and over. So that is different problems than what I see when I work with the mothers and they're coming in with the toddlers. So even when it's the mothers with the toddlers saying, I can't get the iPad off them, I don't know how to take it away. And so I think there's a lot of lack of boundaries and things that are coming around iPad use and
Access to the
YouTube
internet
and all of that, things at such a young age now, and then it's just escalating in terms of online bullying or what kids have accidentally stumbled across. And
I'd love to hear Mary's thoughts on the iPad addiction of the new generation.
Well, I've got an iPad myself, but
And an addiction problem, clearly, Mary.
But what do you think when
I
you see...
can't understand, and I might be old-fashioned and intolerant, but I can't understand how a parent with a 4-year-old child or a 5-year-old child can't say no.
I'm with you, Mary. I don't think... The problem's changed. Our role as parents hasn't.
No.
It was the same when television came in and my parents said you can watch it between 5 and 6 p.m.
That's right.
and that's it. Nothing's changed, just the device. How did that suddenly strip our capacity to be a parent?
Yes.
And it's the kid, you know, again, I'm in a different population because I am seeing all of this in the clinic space, but it's that so many of the kids are dictating what happens, that, you know, well, if I take the iPad away or if I take this away, it's going to lead in, you know, a whole week of tantrums and school refusal, and so I just have to keep feeding it to avoid that.
So how does that conversation though then play into what we're talking about, not judging other mums and being there for other mums? So, you know, you've seen the mum at the cafe giving the screaming 2-year-old the iPad. How do we support her?
I think it's all with the compassion, because we also know what it's like as a mum, and we can't judge what their experience is because we don't know what their experience truly is. Like in that same scenario, if it's a mum who has severe depression, that for her to get out of bed in that morning took absolutely everything, then, you know, yes, maybe part of survival in that day is going to be the child, you know, watching something on the iPad so they can get through to the end of the day. And if we're just all going to judge what each mother is doing, there's no help available.
There's no point, is there? Yeah.
You know, and I do believe that everyone is trying to do the best that they can, and it could be that what we don't know, we don't know. So that often a lot of the people that I'm working with, they're coming because they don't have the answers. I don't know how to stop this, or it's blown so much out of proportion that I don't have the boundaries, and I'm really struggling about how to get that
get them back
or how to set the limits, or I'm just so confused that I don't know what to do because my child is experiencing anxiety and maybe this is their coping strategy. I think we've just become really confused, and we don't trust our own opinion of what's right, because kind of looking at social media as an example now is there's a million different ways that we're being told to parent, and
the right way.
We don't know. We become so confused that, do I do this, or am I being too harsh by doing this? Am I, going to make my child have this problem if I am really firm and set the boundaries and discipline them?
It must still be a positive message, because help is out there. Whether it is the connectedness that Jenny's talked about, other mums, what are you doing, or even professionals like yourself, Leash, we've got that. There's help. There's always help out there, and being able to simply have conversations like this one with other mums might be the first step to that sort of thing. Jenny, you have had children that, iPads would not have been an option when you first started your family, whereas now that's something you have a 4-year-old, that might be something you're coming into contact with. So how has mothering and, the stresses and challenges of mothering changed whilst you've been doing it?
Isn't that a fun side effect of having a full generation?
Yeah, I'm fascinated in this answer, because mine got through I was just saying, social media chased mine through the tail end of their teens, so I didn't have to deal with the screen thing. So I'm fascinated for someone who's gone from
like
not and into.
With each child, as they walk through this.
Yeah.
Our older children, when mobile phones came in, they were allowed the little tiny flip
lids, the Nokias.
And they thought they were pretty flash back then. And now they, when they get a job and stuff, they're like, oh, we need smartphones, we need everything, sort of thing. And we kind of, Ray and I are quite old-fashioned, I guess, and we pull our kids back a lot. So we have a lot of rules about social media and phones. Our children are not allowed, we don't hand our kids a phone at age 10 or 11 like a lot of people do. Because I figure, there's other ways of contacting your children, I guess, to stay in contact with them. So our children have to be 15 when they get their job. They have to work for 12 months. They have to have quite a hefty amount of savings. They have to pay for their own phone. They have to pay for their own use of the phone. Phones are put out onto the bench at night. You're not supposed to be on your phone in your bedrooms, but that doesn't always work. That does happen. And, we do struggle with that. We walk in and out of rooms and say, back out here with that, thanks. Schools have introduced now laptops for
that's another new thing.
Wow, that's
to have it.
Yeah, it's difficult because we're trying to say limit the screen time to children, but then they're on
Schools
them
are giving
the full day, and then they come home. They've got to do their homework, so there's another few hours, and then they want their game time or their fun stuff on there, so they're on it all day.
So the stresses of being a mum, 16 years ago, and the stresses of being a mum are different today maybe, but still there, just different, lots of stresses.
Different, probably, I don't know, maybe even a little bit more difficult because we're not used to it either, and we're not, I'm the world's most technologically challenged person out there, so as my children are doing this stuff, I don't know what they're doing, and I'm learning and I'm trying to keep up, but they're good at it. They know. They
and
know
I kind of feel like Mary, I don't know if you agree, but back in your day, you kind of felt supported in raising your kids, whereas now it feels like with schools bringing out computers and they have to have them at home, it's almost like you're working against. So everything you're trying to do as a parent is getting, things are coming up against you, whether it's a school or social media or constant, it's this, you're going against the stream the whole time, whereas I'm not sure, but I didn't have that as much.
No,
you certainly
I didn't either.
Yeah.
But I have one daughter who said she had 4 children close together, and then she said, well, no TV during the week. And if there's anything on, we'll sit down and watch it with you. And on the weekends, you can play your iPods and computers or whatever you've got. You could go the whole weekend, as long as you fit in a bit of sport. But her kids never, ever had TV during the week. And they've done exceptionally
They've still got a pulse.
well.
They've still got a pulse. They're still alive. It's phenomenal, isn't it?
It is.
How they got
and
through.
they all got OP1s.
Yeah.
Wow.
See,
So the stress is, being a mum is stressful, and it sounds like, doesn't matter what generation, doesn't matter the age of your kids or the size of your family, being a mum's stressful, and it's just sort of how we
but it's a great
negotiate that.
occupation.
It is.
It's not a bad one, is it?
It is, yeah. It's not bad.
It's got its payoffs.
Oh yes, we're very lucky.
We might end on that lovely positive note, saying being a mother's a lovely occupation. So thank you all so much for being here and giving your time. The Realities of Motherhood is now just one of the conversations that's going to be available in the library of Unleash the Beast, the mental health conversation. So I've just loved talking to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.